Good morning and welcome to day 95 of our 365 Bible studies. Today we are continuing looking at the stories from the early monarchy, the period between Saul and Solomon. And at the moment we're looking at the relationship between David and Jonathan. And I'm reading to you from two places in the Old Testament, from the first book of Samuel, chapter 18, verses 1 to 5, and then the second book of Samuel, chapter 1, verses 17 to 26. Saul's son Jonathan was deeply attracted to David. The soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Saul kept David by him after the defeat of the Philistines and wouldn't let him go home. Jonathan took a solemn oath of eternal companionship with David because he loved him so much. He made David presents of his robe, his armour, his sword, bow and belt. Saul made David an army officer and sent him on missions in which he was successful and which gave him a good reputation amongst Saul's officers and troops. Saul and Jonathan eventually perished at the Battle of Mount Gilboa, and David sang this dirge for Saul and his son Jonathan, and ordered it to be taught to the Judean people. Saul and Jonathan, you are so wonderful and dear. You were together in life and also in death. You were swifter than eagles, stronger than lions. Israel's women mourn for you, Saul. Didn't he clothe you richly and adorn you with gold and jewels? The courageous warriors have fallen, slain in battle. Jonathan lies dead among the hills. So I grieve for you, my brother Jonathan. You were so dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, better even than the love of women. Thus have the courageous warriors fallen, their weapons now abandoned, beyond use. How ambiguous these passages are as we read them now, after thousands of years, in a world where same-sex relationships are not unusual. We all think we know that same-sex relationships were forbidden in the ancient world, and that ancient world persisted a fair amount into my own youth and childhood. The language used here is very strong, and the relationship between David and Jonathan can easily be construed as at least physical, if not sexual. The sharing of clothes and other personal items, the vows that were made, and the words wonderful, better than the love of women, hardly admit of any other interpretation. The passages quoted in the New Testament that appear to forbid same-sex relationships are also ambiguous, and we will study them in due course. Amongst Christians, eventually, a refuge for some same-sex relationships was developed in the medieval single-sex religious communities. For LGBT plus Christians, the story of the love between these two soldiers shines like a light at the end of a long, dark tunnel through history. Was this just an extravagant way of talking about the band of brothers mentality that persists amongst the military to this day? Or was it something else, something more? How can we possibly tell? St. Paul tried to put a cap on it when he declared that in Christ there is no male and female, and that the greatest thing is love. But it is only now, and only grudgingly, that the world is really accepting the idea that each of us is what we were born to be, and that love admits of no barriers. Tomorrow, we see David's continuing struggle to claim the monarchy that God has given him. and I'll see you then.